Here is probably the coolest picture that Fit Recovery has ever came up with. This was actually a professional design. We did a contest on, I think it was 99designs.com, and this was the winner, but Chris worked with the guy. So this is a visual model of the hierarchy of recovery. As you see on the biochemical at the bottom, that's the biggest reason why alcohol addiction rates are so high and why mainstream recovery rates for alcohol and other drug addictions are so low. They completely leave out, ignore, fail to address the fact that alcohol and other drugs are physical substances that cause physical changes to the physical brain, and yet there's no physical restoration and healing in any of the mainstream recoveries. They might do a good job at the psychological, they might do a good job at the social and or spiritual, or even all three of those. But if you're not treating the brain deficiencies, dysfunctions, imbalances, which are actually chronic, even regular problem drinking, and certainly alcohol addiction, that leads to, at the very minimum, mild biochemical imbalances like GABA deficiency, dopamine deficiency, excess inflammation, and other things. So what Chris and I found is, we didn't invent this at all, but we both found on our own. I found End Your Addiction Now by Dr. Charles Gant, and also the Mood Cure by Julia Ross. And he found 7 Weeks to Sobriety by Joan Matthew Larson. Now, those are three people that two of them are dead. Joan Matthew Larson passed away, and Dr. Charles Gant passed away. Julia Ross is still alive, but I think she's probably in her 80s. Anyways, these are the three legends in the field of neuro-nutrient therapy. So Renee, you were just talking about amino acid therapy. Now, these three people totally pioneered this since the 1980s, and they're the reason that Chris and I learned about it, and they're the reason that both of us in our own minds had this major light bulb moment. I remember sitting in class at Mueller College when I was in school to become a certified alcohol and drug counselor, and I ordered a book off Amazon called End Your Addiction Now, the proven nutritional supplement program that can set you free. That whole book totally blew my mind, but it gave me my first information ever. It was my first introduction to the fact that when I was addicted to alcohol, addicted to opioids and other drugs, all they were doing was linking up to, going inside and locking inside and turning on certain receptors, receptors, receptors in my central nervous system, in my brain and my spinal cord and other areas where there's central nervous system activation. And so all opioids did was bind to my opioid receptors and lead to a huge rush in endorphins and dopamine. Now, I had heard those words before. I knew that exercise increased endorphins, so I wasn't a total novice, but pretty beginner in it. And then alcohol, the only reason that was addictive is that binded to our GABA receptors. And then when we drink it, it turns those receptors on and then creates a flood of neurotransmitters like GABA, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. Like I said, there was a light bulb moment. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's amino acid supplements and other types of supplements I can take to create these same neurotransmitters in high amounts that previously I used to use alcohol, pills, and even heroin. The last 6 months of my addiction, I graduated to heroin, and that ended me. Like, I was able to go a long time with alcohol addiction, a long time with pharmaceutical addiction and other addictions, but heroin was, that brought me to my knees. And so anyways, long story short, Chris and I didn't invent this, but for the past, almost 12 years, I've been teaching it. And for almost 10 years, Chris has been teaching it, and we've been refining it. So what it is you can imagine all we're working with here is you are a mind, body, spirit complex. So you're a human being, but you have a mind complex, a body complex, and a spirit complex. And they're all intertwined together. You also have an eternal spirit or soul, which is in your fourth consciousness center right here around the heart area. So you're a mind, body, spirit complex in a creation, this simulation, everything's energy, vibration, sound, we're like 99% 99.99% empty space. So this is a holographic, epic illusion or density or dimension or reality where we have mind, body, spirit complex as our self, and there's we're getting close to 9 billion. We're getting close to almost 9 billion other mind, body, spirit complexes. And we also have animals and plants. So we have nature, ourself, and then other selves. So when you look at this hierarchy, this is a combination of really two things. Combination of number one, the biopsychosocial spiritual model of healing. It's a system that came out decades ago. And this also a combination of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a hierarchy and it's a pyramid just like this, where the philosophy of it is you have to meet your needs at the bottom. So you start off at the very bottom of this hierarchy, and you need to fill in your needs or missing links. You need to make sure that the bottom pillar is strong and solid, and that way you can build on top of that and then reach the top. At the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, well, it goes from at the bottom, you have to have food, water, survival, defending from predators, procreation. So those are all the survival drives. And then above that, you get things like family and love and connection and friendship and relationships. And you go all the way up to the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you continue to fulfill consistently all your other needs, you can actually reach self-actualization. The top of the hierarchy of recovery is transcendence. That comes after the spiritual pillar. Transcendence is when you achieve a state of your mind, body, spirit, and consciousness where you view alcohol as not, I used to call cold Budweiser out of a glass cold bottle. I remember telling this with my first therapist, the nectar of the gods. So I used to view alcohol as the nectar of the gods. Now I view it as a totally dehydrating, inflammation-causing poison that destroys your brain and body. So it's a totally moot substance. It's even worse. Moot means having no practical benefits or anything like that. So I actually view it as worse than moot. It's actually poisonous. But that took a long time to get there. So this program and all these programs in coaching is to help you to not make all the mistakes that I made, not make all the mistakes that Chris made, so you can navigate this much better with a proven system that Chris and I have shared this system with so many people, it's ridiculous. And it's changing lives. I mean, totally customizable and totally comprehensive. You're not leaving out the mind, body, spirit, relationships, even dialing into the physical home environment you live in. All right, so this next slide, as you can see, you can start to use this hierarchy to piece in your missing links.